Puneet, AI was a research topic few years back. Today is a business priority. What about tomorrow?
I think tomorrow AI needs to become a lot more real. AI needs to do a lot more for humanity and real access and capabilities for citizens like you and I and all of us.
There is also a rush toward getting AI. What's your advice to those organizations in terms of how they balance?
I'll give you an example of Air India, which is a fascinating example. They were the first ones out of the gate to build a generative AI driven customer service engine. 40,000 queries a day, 13 million queries solved, 97% accuracy.
So do you think pandemic was a pivotal point which changed digital infrastructure and which kind of thrust India in front?
Pandemic did not invent AI or any other technology, but it gave organizations and public sector institutions and all of us a lot more courage and confidence to use technology.
There's a lot of innovation happening in US or maybe Japan. How do you say India?
India, to me, is special because of three things which nobody else in the world has. One is a developer ecosystem, one of the largest in the world. Second, enterprises in India really experimenting and using technology. And we have this stat, which is 47% of enterprises in India are already using AI.
Microsoft recently announced a significant investment in India's AI infrastructure, and a new data center region has just gone live on Indian soil. For a company that has been part of India's technology story for decades, this is a different kind of commitment. Today, the person leading that commitment is here to talk about what it means for Indian businesses, for the workforce, and for where India sits in the global AI story. This is TOI AIQ Talks. I'm Sonia Singh and you're watching TOI AIQ Talks. Today we are in the company of someone who leads one of the most consequential technology businesses in the country. At a moment when the decisions being made about AI infrastructure, enterprise adoption and workforce readiness will shape India for decades. It is, to put it simply, a very good time to have this conversation. Our guest is the president of Microsoft India and South Asia, one of the most influential technology leaders in the region. Under his leadership, Microsoft has deepened its commitment to India in a way that goes well beyond selling software. It is about building the foundation for an AI-powered economy. Puneet Chandok, welcome to TOI AIQ Talks.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you for having me, and thank you, Mayank. Really looking forward to this conversation. I'm thrilled that you guys are here.
Great. And also joining us is Mayank, co-founder and CEO of ADROSONIC. Hi, Mayank.
Thank you, Sonia, and thanks, Puneet. It's really a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
Puneet, AI was a research topic few years back. Today is a business priority. What about tomorrow?
I think tomorrow AI needs to become a lot more real. AI needs to do a lot more for humanity, for all of us. And a lot of this research and design and ideas need to translate into real ROI for enterprises, real impact for public sector and government institutions, and real access and capabilities for citizens like you and I and all of us, right? So I think that is the future, and that's something that we are super excited about.
And how is Microsoft developing India as one of the important markets?
See, India is one of the most exciting markets today in the world for technology. Whatever lens you take to this, Sonia, the demand side, supply side, impact on the world. There are 6,000 plus listed companies in India. They're waiting for the door to be knocked on from a technology perspective. The largest developer ecosystem in the world will be largest in the next 5 years. The second highest contributor to open source projects. There's a ton of AI excitement being built. The digital highways in India with UPI and identity and banking. So there's a ton of excitement in India from a demand, supply, and impact perspective. And we are building on this. And that's the reason our commitment to invest $20.5 billion in India by 2030, train 20 million Indians, including 2 million teachers, really become a force as Microsoft that moves India forward, right? So that is why we are excited about being here.
So do you think pandemic was a pivotal point which changed digital infrastructure and which kind of thrust India in front?
I think Pandemic did not invent AI or any other technology, but it gave organizations and public sector institutions and all of us a lot more courage and confidence to use technology. I think the speed of adoption that we saw during the pandemic was 5 years of technology in 18 months, right? So that compression, that speed, it allowed all of us to build that muscle, Sonia, to adopt technology at a pace that we were not used to, right? And I think it also prepared India in a big way, right? So a lot of our digital public infrastructure, which is being built for the last decade, actually came to light. The way we ran vaccination, the way we used identity, the way we used financial transactions to get access to people. I think that was incredibly well done. So that accelerated what we were building. It didn't really invent it.
You've been saying in a lot of interviews that this may be the last generation to have what we call stable long-term careers. So explain to us, because there are a lot of conversations about this topic, and this sounds alarming also at times, but what needs to change in people's perspective and attitude?
So I want to be precise about this, Sonia, because I think the statement carried on a lot more than I thought it will, and the thought behind it kind of got lost. So I need to be precise on this, right? What I said, Sonia, was work is changing, not ending, right? And the way our parents and grandparents used to look at careers, which is you'll have one job, one role, one company, you'll work for 30, 40 years and then retire with a pension. That template, Sonia, was built for the industrial era. That template is dying, right? So I think that was the point I was trying to make. And I'll tell you a little bit of what's going on underneath it, right? And three just big themes that I'm picking up. First, for the next generation, careers will be long, but they won't be static. They'll be dynamic, right? Just, in fact, this invention of having a career, which is, this is a 20th century invention, right? Where we have one company and one role and we have a ladder to grow in. If you go back 100 years, a lot of, like most people had portfolio, right? So they used to teach, they used to build something, they used to travel. A lot of that will come back, right? So it's nothing new. It's basically we're going back to the old world, but with a lot of new technology and tools. What seems safe now is becoming risky, and what is risky is becoming safe. So I'll give you an example. Having a good job and a settled career seems safe, but it's a risky thing now. But if you're out there learning and growing and building muscles and compounding skills, it sounds risky, but that is a lot more safety, as I would say, right? The other thing, like we all expected our companies to give us job security. I think that transition is starting to happen. We will need to carry our security ourselves based on our skills and our muscles and our learning ability. Companies will not give us that security, right? So that's the first thing, which is careers will be long, but they'll be very dynamic and not static like our parents, right? Second, I think we still believe jobs are the atomic unit of work. That myth will break, right? You have a job as a journalist, as an editor, but you do a bundle of tasks. I have a job as the leader of Microsoft, but I do a bundle of tasks, right? So there's no point me hiding behind that title, right? There's a set of things I need to get done. What AI is doing is it's unbundling those tasks, right? And whoever's best positioned to do those tasks will do it, right? It'll be a fascinating world where a ton of my work will be done by people who are better prepared to do it versus me doing it just because I have that title, right? So hiding behind that title is something that we'll all have to get away with. And then finally, I think you have to be clear-eyed, right? This transition will not be easy. We need a skilling revolution in our country. As Microsoft, we're training 20 million Indians by 2030, 5.5 million trained last year, 2 million teachers to be trained. But a lot of skilling needs to happen. And skilling in AI is the new literacy, right? Which is its removal of fear. A lot of people are still fearful about this, right? So to bring this together, long careers for the next generation, but very dynamic careers. Jobs will not be the atomic unit of work. And then finally, we need skilling at a speed that we've never done before.
So what I can understand from this is that like you go every day for 1 hour in the gym. Now for 1 hour, you should have a definite time for learning, maybe new skills. And then you're safe because you're changing with time. Yeah.
It's fascinating you use that analogy. I use that all the time, right? And I'll give you two nuances on that, right? One, I have a gym close to my house and there's a nice coffee shop next to the gym. Sometimes I just sit in the coffee shop and I hope I'll get fitter. It's not going to happen unless I go to the gym myself. Unless you go to the gym yourself and lift the weights and do the training that you do, you're not going to get fitter, right? So I think on AI, it's a full contact body sport, right? It just, of course, you need to learn, but you need to learn this by doing, right? So I'm a rusty coder. I used to code 30 years ago. I'm coding again now every day, right? Because English has become the new coding language. You and I can code and build stuff now that we couldn't 5 years ago, right? So first is really think about going to the gym and not just sitting outside and hoping to get fit. Second, I think having the agility. I think the shelf life or the half-life of skills is dropping. Really thinking, and to me, I think we need a new skill stack for the AI world. And I think of this as a dumbbell. On the left-hand side is the AI skills. And this is AI literacy, understanding data and foundations, understanding ethical reasoning, judgment, really interrogating the AI output, not just taking it. So that's the dumbbell on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side are real human skills, right? Real collaboration, relationship building, orchestrating people, bringing people together, judgment, curiosity, confidence, capabilities, clarity in terms of how you articulate your thoughts, right? So those are the two ends of the dumbbell, going back to your gym analogy. In the middle is stuff which is getting automated or taken away by AI, like execution. And a lot of us have built careers on execution, right? For centuries, we've trained people on execution and data access and information. A lot of that AI will take away, right? And I think if you can go back to the gym and focus on the left-hand side, which is real AI skills, that is the table stakes. and the real human skills which will become the differentiator. I think that is what will hopefully make all of us.
Yeah, so we need to be excited about our jobs and anything we do.
Getting to the gym.
Yeah. And let's talk about the announcement, the significant investment in AI infrastructure, new data center region going live on Indian soil. I think this is number 4, right? So what is the conviction behind India market?
The first thing we'll do is, I'll say, Sonia, is what we announced was not just an announcement, we switched something on. We switched on our 4th data center in India, 4th Azure data center region. In this AI hype cycle, it's easy to announce capacity, but it's hard to build it. And we're the first ones who moved from intent to action when it comes to hyperscalers. So we're very excited about it. It's our 4th region. What it means for our customers is choice. So it doesn't matter if you're a hospital in a small town or a manufacturing unit or a public sector institution, your ability to keep your data in a sovereign way with the right reliability, the right resilience, in the right context in India is far more important than ever. So we have 4 data center regions, the largest AI capacity that we're building in the country, right? So we're really, really excited about that. And then the last thing is, I think there's a lot of debate on sovereignty. And I think India is clearly asking that we need to own our digital destiny. And in this world, I think sovereignty is less about geography, but more about which platforms can you trust. And we're putting our money where our mouths are, right? Which will be truly building and switching on capacity for India so that India can build on its own terms for 1 billion Indians.
So like building for India, that is what my next question would be, that there's a lot of innovation happening in US or maybe Japan. How do you see India? Is it like a customer market, or do we have, I mean, in Microsoft itself, how is the innovation from Indian talent?
So I think it's interesting you said, right? There is, I think India to a certain extent on AI is misunderstood, right? And I think I want to go deeper into this. You're right, there's a lot of innovation coming out of US and China because a lot of these frontier models are concentrated in a few labs that are being built across the world. A lot of these frontier models require a ton of capital, a ton of compute, a lot of research and science behind it. So that is getting concentrated, and that is a fact. But I genuinely believe, Sonia, that the real value to be had on these models is not just in building the models, but deploying these models for 1 billion people, translating that into real ROI for people, real impact, real access, real capability, which is where India is standing out. So whatever study you look at, the latest Stanford study came out, ICRIAR came out with this study. India is amongst the top 3 or 5 countries in the world when it comes to AI vibrancy, right? So India, to me, is special because of 3 things which nobody else in the world has. One is a developer ecosystem, one of the largest in the world. Second, enterprises in India really experimenting and using technology. And we have this stat, which is 47% of enterprises in India are already using AI. 23% are piloting it. So a large proportion of enterprises are starting to use it. And then to your point, the startup ecosystem and the talent ecosystem, right? So of course, there is frontier model innovations happening in a few labs in the world, but the real value, the real impact will come building on top of these models, which are becoming just a layer, which is where India is very well positioned, given some of the capabilities we spoke about.
And looking at the UPI example, where we created a lot of frontier models were there, but a lot of other applications were created, and then suddenly it was a different wave. Absolutely, probably for the this thing also.
It's fascinating you said this, right? Because when AI arrived, India had something to plug AI into, which is our digital public infrastructure. UPI, 20 billion transactions a month, roughly half of the financial transactions, the digital transactions in the world happen in India, right? The identity platform, the payments platform, I could go on, right? But India has the ability to plug AI into digital public infrastructure and then enable citizen scale, population scale AI, which nobody else in the world has. And that's a real opportunity for India to double down on.
Yeah, and when it comes to talent again, do you think the kind of education which is going on right now, or the academics, or the educators for that matter, is the ambience right over there, or we need to change our curriculums now? We need to change according, like Microsoft has been training a lot of. I mean, what are the challenges you feel, or what are the positives you feel that can, because Indian talent worldwide is pretty known, the largest, the youngest, and probably in terms of coding, the community is growing a lot here.
So listen, I'm glad you asked this, right? And going back to this other piece around long careers, but dynamic careers, and job is not the atomic unit of the work. I think the next generation will have a portfolio of things. By the way, I was reading about your career. You had a portfolio of things that you've done. You started with mainstream TV, and then you've done multiple other things, right? And it was a fascinating, inspiring story about how you built your career. The next generation, Sonia, will have a portfolio of things that they'll do, right? And sometimes we assume this portfolio is a bug. I think it's a feature, right? Because Like telling my kids that you'll have a portfolio of career is a liberating thing versus asking a 17-year-old to decide what career they want based on the subject they want to pick, right? I think that is pressure. But telling my 16-year-old teenager that, listen, you can have a portfolio of things and build multiple skills that'll compound on each other is a far more liberating force than telling them, listen, you choose once and live with it for the rest of your life, which is what I did to a certain extent, right? So I think that is fascinating what's happening. Second, I think as AI takes on the execution work, Sonia, and this is what we call the new agency equation, then the young generation will have a lot more access to more interesting value-added judgment work. Like you and I probably spend the first few years of our career doing a lot of grunt work, a lot of basic execution work. The next generation will probably leapfrog that, right? Which is they will have real agency to take decisions, to drive outcomes. And that is, again, I think it's a much kinder world than the world that you and I entered. But that means training and skilling needs to change dramatically, right? This is not about training now becomes a habit, not a one-time event, right? You had a certification 4 years ago, it doesn't mean much to me, right? So you have to really make it a habit going back to the gym every day to get fit versus once a year running a marathon. It's two very different things, right? And then finally, we have to teach people, going back to my skill stack barbell, right? We have to teach people the AI skills, which are truly table stakes now, agent orchestration, building with AI, and the real human skills, right? The problem is we've trained people for the longest time on execution, and that is something that's not going to serve us well. So the faster we can move to the two ends of the barbell in the gym, the better this next generation will be prepared for.
So, what AI adds efficiency, and how does it actually mean to businesses or to corporates or to professionals?
So the first thing I'll say, Sonia, is you've got to take a step back on AI, which is it's unlike any other tech wave we've seen. It's more transformative than at least any other technology I've seen. And the reason I say this is because with AI, we have for the first time as humankind, we have the ability to mass produce intelligence. Intelligence was always linked to biology, right? Intelligence used to sleep, take weekends off, used to have ego and mood swings, and we were carrying intelligence with us, right? With AI, we're living in a remarkable time because for the first time, compute is becoming cognition, compute is becoming intelligence, right? Machines are becoming intelligence, right? And intelligence got its value from its scarcity, right? You had to find people to do things, right? Now intelligence will be abundant, almost like a utility like electricity or water, right? So that's the remarkable thing about AI. Now, to your point around how does it impact and is it about efficiency? I think efficiency is almost the wrong word because it means different things for different countries, right? If you think about the developed world, right, the rich world, for them, AI means more productivity, right? For the same people, you can do more work. It's like the same car, but with a better engine. If you look at emerging countries like India, it means more capacity, right? You can really, it's like you have more seats in the car, you have a bigger car. And then for the developing world, it means more access, right? So services that couldn't reach citizens across the length and breadth of the countries, you with AI now you can bring access to it, right? And I'll give you some real examples to tell you that India is probably the only country in the world where all three are happening at the same time: productivity, capability, and capacity, and then real access happening, right? The four largest IT services companies in the country, Infosys, Wipro, LTI, Mindtree, TCS, are deploying co-pilots across 100,000 people to drive productivity for the engineers, right? So Copilot is becoming the fabric for Indian IT services to deliver, which is productivity. I'll give you an example of Apollo Hospitals. So they're building co-pilots for doctors and they're giving 20% time back to doctors. In a country like India, that's not productivity, that's supply, because you had 20% more doctor time available. I'll give you an example of access. In India, we've built eShram, which is a platform for unorganized workers. 300 million unorganized workers in our country have access to resume building and jobs and opportunities. eSanjeevani, 400 plus telemedicine healthcare consultations have happened. So again, across real productivity for engineers, capability for doctors as an example, and every professional, and then access for our people, be it unskilled workers or be it healthcare. AI is doing all of that for India, which is fascinating.
And maybe it gives them work-life balance also later.
I hope so.
So, in terms of AI adoption across India, what is your experience been? Is it still in the pilot stage, or people are scaling up? Are they still talking, or they adopting it?
I think they're adopting it. They're not, and I think
So, in all boardrooms, we have the AI budgets now.
so. There are AI budgets. There's real curiosity around AI. I think we've also moved a lot in the last 12 months, Sonia. 12 months ago, there was a lot of pilot tourism going on, and one of my customers used to joke that I have more pilots, AI pilots in my company than Air India. So I think that era of pilot tourism is ending now, right? And people are saying, listen, show me durable enterprise value from AI, right? I don't want to just do pilots and experiment. I don't think Indian companies need more experimentation with AI and this bottom up, lots of let a thousand flowers bloom. So there's a real concerted push now happening towards ROI and use cases that matter, that deliver real impact for customers and for businesses. And we as Microsoft are thinking of this in two parts, which is intelligence and trust, which is how do we bring, going back to this ability to create intelligence with machines, how do we bring intelligence which is contextual to these companies, right? A customer recently told me that some of these frontier models are like brilliant strangers. They know everything about the world. They don't know anything about me. So their answers are not very helpful. So the first thing we're doing, which is how do we bring this intelligence in your context, right? How does Times of India work? What does execution really look like? What does good work look like in Times of India? And then translating these models into your context so that your intelligence is contextual to you. It's not a brilliant stranger. It's somebody who knows you really well. And then building trust around it, right? Because there's still a lot of anxiety around this. There's an agent sprawl happening. There are more agents in our companies that we know of. So how do we make sure we bring governance, trust, and security? So as we bring intelligence and trust together, a lot of this pilot tourism will end, and we're starting to see durable enterprise value.
All right. Okay, so for a business leader watching this, maybe a mid-sized company, what should he plan? What should his steps be if he wants to get in touch with Microsoft maybe and to try and adopt AI?
Pick up the phone and call. We're waiting. So no, I think
Yeah.
that aside, I think that's a great question, right? Which is, and I get this question from a lot of folks, right? Which is saying, how do we get started? Especially if you're sitting on the edge and thinking about what to do with AI, right? The first thing I'll say is you can't outsource it to your IT department or your CI or your CTO or your tech people or your provider, right? You really have to own this. This is a C-suite priority. Bottom-up AI innovation will not self-organize into durable value. It has to start top-down. So if you're a leader of a mid-sized company, my first question is, what is your own AI stack? How are you using AI? You need to lead with example here and really lead this for the company, right? Don't outsource it to a certain department or a function. Second, I think you have to really reimagine processes and workflows, right? Putting AI on a bad process just makes it move faster and produce more bad things, right? Which is, what are the processes within your company where you have a clear theory of value creation, and then you then unleash AI on those processes, right? Third, it's a cultural renaissance that you need in a company, right? Which is going back to how many people in your, and the question I ask customers is, how many people in your company are you training on AI? Whatever number they give me, Sonia, I add a zero behind it, because you need much more AI skilling, right? So are you skilling? Are you making sure that everybody in your company understands how to use these tools? Are you providing them the right copilots, the right tools to use it? And then giving them the right training and enablement to really make sense of this, right? So it starts with the C-suite, the leader himself or herself. It is about reimagining processes for this AI era where you have human capital and token capital, not just human capital, and you have to get these two to work together. And third, the cultural skilling training renaissance that is required in every company.
Now I'll get Mayank in. Mayank is doing pretty similar thing, AI adoption for a lot of companies. So with his experience, let's figure out what questions he has for you.
Absolutely.
So Puneet, as you said that many firms are now adopting AI. Almost every organization is now adopting AI. But then there are firms who are adopting AI, and then there are firms who are actually creating measurable business outcomes of the AI. So from your experience, what is that difference between these two organizations?
It's a great question, Mike, which is, what differentiates people who are really getting durable enterprise value versus people who are still experimenting, going back to the pilot tourism and some of the examples that Sonia and I spoke about, right? Now, I'll go back to some of the things that I told Sonia about the mid-tier company example she was asking, right? Companies that are getting real value are starting from the C-suite, right? Which is, this is a leadership initiative. This is not something that is being outsourced to IT department or the CIOs or the CTOs. It is the leadership that is truly leading with example, really taking a top-down ambition around this. A lot of leaders in frontier companies, and we call them frontier companies, where they're really getting AI to compound for them. The top leadership is coming out with a clear ambition, a clear strategy, a clear plan for making AI a reality in their companies, right? So this is not outsourced to different functions. Second, I think they're really reimagining processes. And going back to a crappier process running faster with AI will produce more crap. You really need to reimagine your processes. This is a new world where you have human capital, token capital working together. And the question to ask is, how are you really getting human capital and token capital to work together so that your human capital gets smarter every day, your token capital gets optimized, and you run this loop and compound this, right? So really reimagining some processes for the AI era, not just putting AI on top of broken processes and the old processes. Third is this piece around, you and I spoke about this, right? Which is having forward compatible data and infrastructure, right? You can't run, and we all know this, right? AI can't run on bad data and bad infrastructure. So are you truly adopting cloud in the right way? Are you making sure that your data is ready in the right access format so that AI can really build on it and have your context around this? The last piece is around trust and security. And also just thinking about the point around a brilliant stranger, which is what these frontier models are. Are you contextualizing these models for your own context and then building trust and security around this, right? So if you bring these 3 or 4 things together, leaders really leading with an ambition and walking the walk on this and not just talking about it, reimagining and re-architecting work for this new world with human and tokens working together, really thinking about infrastructure in a different way and your data structures in a different way, and then thinking about trust, security, training, skilling, some of the things that we've spoken about. That is the new playbook that's emerging, Mayank, for companies that are truly becoming frontier AI companies and getting ROI around this.
So if I interpret it more about not implementing AI in your existing process, but more reinventing your process, thinking, building your process around AI.
Yes.
Is that what?
Absolutely. You have to reimagine the process. And I'll give you my own example, right? Like in my office, we have a few people who run my office, and we added a few agents and digital colleagues. One thing we realized, Mayank, was that these digital colleagues don't sleep. They work on weekends, they're working 24/7. But the human colleagues have a different way of working, right? So we now had to reimagine how the process works. So just adding agents or digital colleagues to any process does not solve the problem. You have to really reimagine this for a new era where humans and tokens are working together and both are learning from each other and compounding. And I think that's where a lot of work needs to happen, Mac.
No, then that's a great insight. And one question, Puneet, like I see that there is also a rush toward getting AI, implementing AI. And when you look at more legacy organization or organization that have a lot of legacy data, or say, very much regulated industries like insurance, at one stage you want to implement AI quickly. On the other stage, you mentioned that you need to have a foundation of data for so much thing to prioritize. What's your advice to those organizations in terms of how they balance that? Because it can't be done sequential in this era. So how they balance this with getting the data foundation right and implementing AI in parallel? Is there any advice?
No, it's a great question, Mayank. Again, and I don't think it's sequential, right? Which is you can't wait for your data and infrastructure to be in place for you to adopt AI. In fact, how do you really use AI to make sure your data is getting ready, right? The old world of organizing data in SQL databases and thinking about data structures was very different to the new world, where you can really use AI to make sure some of your infrastructure moves from really legacy old world infrastructure to cutting edge infrastructure and cutting edge data structures that can work in the AI world, right? So how do you really use AI to cross that bridge versus waiting on the other side and saying at some point I will start walking towards the other end of the bridge, right? So AI can really help you make that shift and make that transition. And a lot of companies are already doing this, right? If you look at the largest institutions in the country, a lot of banking institutions, meant to your point around regulated industry, from Axis Bank to ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, there are large banks and institutions in this country who are using AI across the board. I'll give you an example of Air India, which is a fascinating example. They were the first ones out of the gate to build a generative AI driven customer service engine. 40,000 queries a day, 13 million queries solved, 97% accuracy, completely a new AI stack to do customer service. The first airline in the world. Now, they already had a lot of legacy infrastructure and data, but they were able to leapfrog it because they thought about AI differently and used it to make that shift across the bridge versus waiting.
Yeah, and as a customer, I can feel that, the kind of service quality that they're getting out of
Yes.
Air India. Other question for it, like as AI is getting democratized, and there will be a stage very soon when everyone will have access to AI. So in that era, what will be the differentiating factor between the organization which will be successful and the organization which may not be so successful?
No, it's an interesting point, Vank, which is, and I call this a sovereignty test for companies, right? And the question I ask a lot of CEOs and boards is saying, you're currently building on a certain set of models. If you were to change the model tomorrow and there was a cheaper, better, faster model available, what would happen to your intelligence that you built on that model, right? Would you retain that intelligence or would that go away with the model, right? And the simpler way to frame this is, are you renting intelligence? Are you owning intelligence with these models, right? And that's where I think the biggest factor here is your ability to build your own intelligence. Again, going back to this brilliant stranger analogy, right? A customer told me that AI is like this PhD which comes in, it knows everything about the world, doesn't know anything about me. I'd rather have AI as a child that grows within my organization, understand how my organization works, what does good work look like, what are the knowledge turns, what is execution, what is excellence in my company, and then gives me the answers, right? So I think this first piece is around really building your own intelligence, using these models on your own terms versus the other way around, building your right agent harnesses around them, preserving your IP and making sure these models work for you versus the other way around, right? So that's the first big shift that a lot of enterprises need to make and think deeply about. Second is this trust layer, which is, are you thinking about, like every employee who joins your company has an ID, has access, he or she has access to certain things. Is it the same for agents in your company? Because I can promise you there are more agents in your company today that you know. There are more agents in Microsoft that I know because they're all growing. Everybody is building agents, right? So how do you really build trust around them with the right security, the right guardrails? We just built something called Agent 365, which is a control plane for agents. Like employees and humans get monitored with the right tokens and right IDs and right access, all agents will need to, you need to have the right guardrails for them. So to your question, two things: intelligence in your own context, not just a brilliant stranger, and trust and security. If you get these two things right, you will make that leap, man.
So it's more like a contextual model and more kind of small language model that you can build inside in which understand your business and your context. Is that what?
The point is, these models, and be it small language models or large language models, you're fine tuning, you're doing RLE. There are multiple ways of distilling these models. There are multiple ways to solve for this, right? But the problem statement is that you should have the ability to have your own intelligence, getting these frontier models to work with your context, because only then this intelligence will work for you versus a brilliant stranger who knows everything about the world, right? So that translation layer, that ontology, which is how your enterprise works, what does excellence look like, translating that IP, that tacit knowledge into these models and then getting them to work for you is where the ROI is, man.
That's really a great insight. Man. My last question. I know you are very passionate about reskilling and creating a workforce on AI and also on around industry academia collaboration. So, and one thing which we did in Adrotonic is we set up a lab, a digital innovation lab in DIT Nasra, where we are working with PhD students and computer science professors, bringing real life problems to them. And our innovation team is working, and that strengthen further believes that we need to the reskilling cannot be the responsibility of academia alone, and industry also needs to come together. How do you, like, from your perspective, how do you see someone who's very passionate about that, how do you see what your message to industry and academia in terms of building that AI workforce, because we do need that workforce to be ready in order to get value also.
Listen, I'm glad you're doing so much with institutions, and I think we all need to do more, right? My first point is none of us have the answers alone, right? As the industry, as the academia, as the government, as the enterprises, as the small and medium sector in the country, all of us need to come together. None of us can alone solve this problem, right? And it's both an opportunity and a problem, right? India has got roughly 1 million graduates coming out of colleges every month. We need to train them. We need to skill them, right? And I think there are 3 or 4 big shifts that need to happen, Mayank. First is, this is, again, going back to this piece around, this is not a one-time, AI learning is not a one-time event. It has to become a habit. This lifelong job and have one degree and then earn for the rest of your life template is completely broken. So how do we rewire our institutes for constant lifelong learning versus a one-time event? Second, it's not just about credentials, it's about capabilities, right? The question I ask every young kid, next generation kid I meet is saying, what are you building? Can you show me a demo? Can you show me the code? Can you show me the presentation you made? Can you tell me the story that you've done? It's not about the certifications and degrees. We all have them in loads. But what are you building? Show me versus tell me what you have, right? So it's not credentials, it's real capabilities. You have to think about this. Third, going back to this barbell skill stack for AI, where you need some real AI skills and human skills, how are we preparing this, right? I'll ask you a question, which is going back to this piece around AI taking away the first 5, 6 years of execution grunt work. But that's how you and I build judgment, right? The early stages of this ladder, the early rungs of this ladder is how we build capabilities and judgment and skills. If those early stages, early rungs of the ladder are done by AI, how will we train the next generation on judgment, right? And that's where I think the industry needs to come together. We all need to come together and say, listen, this is how we will invest. And that's the reason is Microsoft training 20 million people in India. We're also very passionate about training teachers. Like, teachers are the force multipliers. If the teachers don't know AI, how will the next generation learn AI, right? So we're training 2 million teachers in India, and India is becoming the world's largest classroom. So a lot of work. Again, none of us have all the answers together, but if we can come together, some of these shifts moving from one-time event to habits, credentials to real capabilities, real solving some of these problems together as different parties coming together, I think that's what I'm passionate about, and we're working hard towards.
So that's great insight. One thing I also spoke inside Adrosonic is that we have grown in IQ driven, academics, and it's more now the EQ driven academics that is needed so that you understand that empathy and that judgment to excel in this AI era.
No, absolutely, man. I think we need going back to that dumbbell, right? The AI skills are the table stakes now. We need to make sure the next generation can use AI, and that's why it's skilling and teachers and some of the stuff we spoke about. And then to your point around the real human skills, be it emotional capabilities, relationships, orchestration, bringing people together, judgment, curiosity, clarity. AI amplifies everything you think. So are you thinking clearly? Are you articulating clearly? Do you have the confidence to back your views? Are you truly daring to know and learn? I think both these sides need a lot of work, and we all need to come together and make it happen.
Thank-
So,
Very
thank you.
interesting conversation. Puneet, I just wanted to ask you that if you could give a message to all the parents who are watching, all the school children who are watching, all the college students who are watching, professionals who are watching, what do they need to do now, so that they can become good AI skilled workers in the future. And, starting from, because even a toddler has a mobile now. I mean, they eat their food or, or whatever, drink their milk only with the mobile on.
That's
Yeah,
a great question, Sonia. The first thing I'll tell to every anxious parent, including me, is I think be less anxious, because I think the first thing I feel, Sonia, is this young generation is far more ready than we give them credit for. The next generation, my kids, a lot of our kids around us are AI native already, right? They're watching YouTube to learn skills. They're not waiting for anybody's permission to learn something. They're building competencies and capabilities. I didn't have those muscles when I started early in my career, right? So this generation is far more ready than it's given credit for. The point is, for parents and for society at large, are we ready for them? Are we preparing them? Are we giving them all the support they need, right? And some of the shifts we spoke about, which is having a portfolio career for these kids, is a feature, not a bug. It's a liberating force. Train them for it. Make that mindset shift for yourself. As a parent, you have to make that mindset shift that my kids might not have a long-term one job, one career. Having a portfolio is an exciting thing. It's a liberating thing. Second, they'll have more agency because they'll do less execution, less transactional grunt work that you and I grew up with, which is terrific for them, right? It's a much kinder, much more liberating world for them. And then finally, just as a parent, uh, both educate yourself, and I think all of us are using AI, but as a parent, you have to really use AI in the right way. Like every time my son's studying something or my daughter's studying something, I go back to my co-pilot and say, listen, how do I really help him or her? Right? So are you using AI in the right way? But listen, be less anxious, be more prepared, focus a lot more on learning. Going back to your analogy, go back to the gym every day, learn these skills, both the AI skills and the human skills. And I think human capabilities are neither finite nor fixed. Like these young kids are far more anxious and curious, far more curious than us, and we are more anxious. They're far more curious. They have a far more learning agility, Sonia, that you and I had, and I think they'll do better.
Last two questions.
Sure.
2047, there's a target of being the developed country. So, what do you think, with your experience with Indian economy and your engagement with Indian economy, how quick can we achieve that, or is it possible or not? And what is the role of AI in that?
I think first of all, it's a terrific ambition to have, right? I think it's just the Prime Minister and the government have led this vision, which is super energizing for all of us, and we all geared towards it, and we're doing everything we can. It is absolutely possible, and I think technology and AI have to play a big role, Sonia. And there are some estimates that AI will add $1 trillion to our GDP. It'll obviously move us towards our 2047 Viksit Bharat vision. But it goes back to the three things that we spoke about, which is how do we make our people more productive, right? Which is then going back to copilots as the interface layer for Indian engineers. How do we drive more productivity? How do we drive more capacity? Going back to copilots for doctors at Apollo Hospital or Air India, where they're doing more customer service, for lawyers, for doctors, for engineers, for technologists, for journalists, for researchers. How do we bring more capacity into the market using AI and freeing up time for people, right? And then third is access. How do we make every service in India accessible to every Indian? When 1 billion people in India rise with AI and they can really get AI to work for them on their own terms, India will rise. So the ambition is terrific. We're all pushing really hard towards it. It's actually possible, but AI will have to play an integral role to make productivity, capability, capacity, and access happen for this to be a reality.
And the last question, what is Microsoft's ambition for India for the next maybe 5 years?
First up, Sonia, we're super energized and excited about India. And the way we think about our investments in India is three things. First is real capacity, right? Going back to our fourth data center going live in Hyderabad. So 4 regions in India, Mumbai, Pune, Chennai, and Hyderabad now. So we can meet India's requirements where India wants us to in the right, reliable, resilient, sovereign way, right? So that's the first thing, which is really scale and infrastructure. Second is skills. Going back to the entire conversation on anxious parents and curious kids, we have to train people on a speed that we've never done. So we're training 20 million people, 2 million teachers. We have to do a lot more. Third is sovereignty, which is, and we have Azure Local now available in India, but making sure that we give India the sovereign solutions that are required. on India's terms, right? So I think we're super excited. And if you see some of the growth that we are seeing in India, be it Copilots, be it Azure, a lot of this is testament to the market opportunity and all the investments that we are making, and we'll continue to do more.
So, Mayank, what is one thing that every CEO should take from today's conversation?
So, Sonia, from today's conversation, one thing is very clear, that AI itself is not going to be the differentiating factor. It will be available with everyone. So, the organization that will get success is where the C-suite will lead from the front, is an organization that will contextualize the AI in their own context. So, just like what Puneet mentioned, is that not a very intelligent stranger, but an AI model that understand knowledge in your organization context. The other aspect is that how you put security and guardrails around that model so that your data is safe and reliable. And finally, is more about training the workforce to be AI ready. And when you're training the workforce, we also need to understand that what Puneet said, that most of the processing layer is going to be taken by AI. So it's more about understanding the EQ aspect of it, and the judgment, the empathy, and how that human skills we develop. I think these will be the factors that I learn or I am taking away, and my messages for the CEO who really want to use AI to create business value and to generate the differentiating factor for success in future.
Definitely great learnings for the CEOs here. Wish you all the best. Thank you so much for this conversation, Puneet and Mayank.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you, man. Fascinating answers. Appreciate it.
Here's what I'm taking from today. The infrastructure is being built. The investment is committed. The question for every business, every professional, and every institution watching this is a simple one. Are you building with it, or are you waiting? Because if today's conversation has taught us anything, it is that the window is open and it will not stay open forever. Puneet, Mayank, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
TOI AIQ Talks is a conversation that India's AI era deserves. Honest, informed, and far-sighted. And every episode builds towards the TOI AI Quotient Awards coming this September, recognizing the organizations and leaders across India that are genuinely building with AI to solve real problems and create real outcomes. If that is you, if your organization is doing work with AI that deserves a spotlight, nominations are now open. Head to our website and nominate today. Don't wait to be discovered. Step forward. We'll see you in the next episode.